What's happening, YouTube? Thanks for tuning back into the channel today, right here with the Rust Belt Mechanic. So today we've got a little bit of winter maintenance going on. I've got my wife's 2017 Dodge Charger here on the lift today. We're going to be going through a couple of the steps that I like to do for winterization, as well as get into some brake products and some tools that I like to use for doing some brake services for these, just going into the winter months. It's going to be a good one. Stay tuned. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about doing a brake service. Obviously, we're going to do the oil change and tire rotation just as I normally would do, but talking brake services here. Now, we're talking brake fluid here in the Rust Belt area because brake fluid is what they call hygroscopic. That means it likes to absorb any amount of moisture that it can get into it at all. And what a lot of people don't realize is that brake fluid is one of those things that really should be serviced in your vehicle. If you don't, then you're going to have a whole lot of other issues, such as seals that are going to expand and eventually leak, hoses that expand internally, so you don't see an issue until it's finally an issue and your hoses are, we'll say, expanded on the inside. You're going to have a locked up hose, locked up calipers. It makes a whole list of issues down the road. Now, if you do regular brake flushes every couple of years or so, that really helps to cut down on that, because any amount of moisture within that brake fluid is what breaks down the brake hoses and brake seals within the system. Anything rubber in a brake system is pretty much what can and will eventually get broken down. So today what we're going to do, we're going to be showing you guys how to do a pressure brake flush. Today we're going to be using the SP Tools part number SP70809. It is a pressure bleeding device for brakes and clutches. And then I've got a nice little show here of all the adapters that they do have available. They don't really have a master kit. You guys can order the adapters to exactly what you need for your specific application, so you're not overspending on a big master set if you really don't need it. You're going to be using our Mopar DOT3 brake fluid for this today, as well as I've got a little bit of a brake fluid collection bottle set up here. Normally, if I was bleeding with a partner, I'd be able to put into the reservoir the external upright filler and fluid filler reservoir to go along with my brake catcher, because we don't need to be making a mess on this one too. So like I said, normally we're going to be doing our oil change, the checking of the air filter, check our wiper blades, filling the fluids, checking everything else like normal. And then we're going to go over to our brake fluid area right here. Specifically on the Dodge Charger, there's a little access panel right up here in the cowl. It says brake fluid access, so pretty easy to get to. Pop it out right there. Right inside here, we've got our brake fluid cap, able to twist that one off. And then the adapter for this one from SP Tools USA that we're going to use is SP70810 adapter. So all that's going to do is screw right on to our fluid reservoir right here on top. Now, a quick pro tip for you before you even get started in on a job like this would be to lift your vehicle up or get underneath of it, and you're going to want to try to crack your brake bleeders loose on your calipers. Up here in the Rust Belt or any kind of northern states that have a lot of salt on the roads, they like to get a lot of corrosion buildup, and those brake bleeders, which are really tiny little pieces of pot metal that go into an aluminum housing and a brake caliper, they're usually not very good, so they end up corroding, rusting, and will break off very easily when you go to use them. So make sure that those things actually come free before you start on this. Otherwise, you're going to need some calipers, maybe some hoses. Like I said, good idea to check that one ahead of time. So actually now what we're doing is we're going to be filling up our reservoir chamber here on the pressure bleeder with some of our DOT3 brake fluid. All you have to do is take off the small cap here on the side and just fill it up to whatever desired amount that you're looking to do based on the application that you're going to be using this for. If you're going to be doing a clutch master cylinder or something like that, you really don't need that much, but we're doing a full brake system flush tonight, so we're going to be using 2 full bottles. I believe these are 12 ounce. Yep. 12-ounce bottles of DOT3 brake fluid. Brand new fluid, so we know we're not getting anything used into the system, which will introduce moisture. We just really don't want that. So 2 new bottles, that will usually get us good enough for what we're going to be doing with this charger. Now, one of the things that I really do like about this setup from SP Tools is the quality of build that the pressure brake bleeder has to it. The hose is not a really stiff, rigid hose. It does have quite a bit of nice flex to it, as well as the couplings are very nice chrome-plated couplings. They're not really cheap to it. It does have plastic caps on the actual bottle, but for the top of the pump assembly, it does have a metal backing to this area here. So that's usually one of the areas that goes out first in the way of the seal. I've been using a couple other ones from OEM Tools as well as Lyle before, and this one I'd have to say definitely is one of my favorites that I've been able to use. Does have a pressure bleed off area right here. If you are to have an issue, you can bleed off the pressure in the system really quick. Now we're going to hook this up to our brake reservoir and the adapter cap that we already have installed, and then we're going to pump up this handle until we reach right around 15 psi. You don't really want to exceed 15 psi. A little bit less than that is just fine for this system. If you exceed that, then you might be damaging some seals and other components within your brake system that you really don't want to have to replace later on in the future. So keep it to about 15 psi, easily readable on the gauge here on the front. Then what we're going to do is we're going to start opening our caliper bleeders one at a time. Normally on a streetcar application, you're going to start at the furthest caliper away from the master cylinder first. So you're going to go to the passenger rear, driver's rear, passenger front, driver's front. Now you might want to look up the manual brake bleeding procedure in your specific manufacturer's vehicle. It may vary from option to option, from vehicle to vehicle, so you may want to check that one out. But that's generally a good rule, is to use that procedure. Put that onto there, and then we're just going to pressurize the system a little bit at a time until it gets up to 15 psi. Now, under some applications, you might have enough room to be able to get to the back of the calipers from underneath the car, in which you wouldn't have to take the wheels loose. But for video purposes, and because I'm going to be doing a tire rotation anyways on my wife's car, let's go ahead and take the wheel off just so we can get some more room in there. And I am using my SP Tools 1/2" mid-torque impact for doing this as well. This is a bad gun right here. Make sure you check this one out. I'll put a link to this one down in the description below. Now, a lot of people would say that you really don't need to be doing this service on a 2017. Now, for my specific vehicle, I like to, just because I like to put it in a rotation. Every other year, I'll change out the brake fluid on all of my vehicles, just to keep it in that nice, easy rotation, because I don't like continuously replacing lots of brake parts. Living here in Ohio, lots of rust and corrosion, humidity issues. Lots of that equals more maintenance. So the more maintenance I do, that would be the least amount of fixing that I have to do later on down the road. Now, like I said, when I'm doing a job like this, I like to hook up my brake fluid collection bottle. Now, that's not just to keep things clean. Yes, I do like having a nice clean work area, but it does have this nice clear hose to it. So if I do have any air pockets or any kind of issues within the system while I'm bleeding it, I can see any kind of air bubbles that are going through here while I'm bleeding it. I'm going to continuously bleed until I see the difference in color of the fluid change, which I'll show you when we do it, as well as making sure that we don't have any air pockets or air bubbles coming out while we're bleeding it as well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to break my bleeder loose here, and we see that we start getting our dark brake fluid. Now, if you look before, the brake fluid that we put into the reservoir up top was really nice, clear, almost like a bright honey. So this brake fluid being as dark as it is, it means we're just having a lot of, you know, that hygroscopic issues to it, and it popped right off there. Make sure you have it good and seated onto the nipple before you start pulling it off. So we're going to pull this thing again, kind of pull it open. And we're going to continue to bleed this fluid here until we get a nice change in color from that really dark, like almost dirt color, till we get to a little bit lighter fluid, like the brighter amber color that we put into the reservoir up front. There we go. Got our passenger side rear all hooked up. Now you're going to want to keep in mind that as you go along with the bleeding procedure, your pressure is going to bleed a little bit down from the unit up front. Each time you use this for about 1.5 minutes, it's going to bleed down for about 5 or so PSI. So usually for every two wheels that I do, I'll go back up front and pump the unit back up another 5 PSI or so, and that'll get us through to the front. So we're going to bleed this second one here in the rear. We're going to repressurize our unit, and then we're going to go to the front ones. All right, get a close up here. See how we've got that nice dark brake fluid with all that moisture content built into it? That's what we are getting rid of. And another tip that still has to do with the bleeders, make sure you put the little bleeder caps back onto the bleeder housings, because any kind of moisture gets into the middle of the bleeders. That's what causes corrosion, and you probably won't be able to break the bleeders free the next time you go to use them. So now all we've got to do is bleed off the remainder of our pressure. Like I said, pressure relief right here. And all that does is bleed off everything else in the system. Then all we have to do is unclip from the unit, unscrew our adapter. It's a little bit on the full side, so I would recommend sucking out just a little bit off the top from there, just to get it down to the normal mark. And then let's check and see what the fluid difference is between the new stuff and the stuff that we emptied out of this vehicle. All right, so now we've got a couple of empty plastic bottles here. We're gonna pour in a little bit of the brand new fluid that we had left in the container here, just to show you guys brand new fluid. So that's brand new right there. And we've got the old junk fluid that we emptied out of the vehicle itself. And we'll put this one into this container here. So here we are, 45,000 miles on a 2017 Dodge Charger. And obviously this thing is not driven hard because it still has the original tires on it, and they're still in pretty good condition. So brand new brake fluid, 45,000 miles on the brake fluid. That's a huge difference, and that's just to show how much of a difference it makes in actually doing brake flush services. So for those shops or dealerships who are trying to sell you on a brake flush or a brake fluid service, it's not BS. This goes to show you how bad your brake fluid can get. This much dirt, debris, breakdown of the inside of the linings of your brake hoses and everything, that's what's in your brake system, and that's what's breaking down all of the rubber components. Not good. So make sure, just, you know, rule of thumb, about every other 1.5 to 2 years or so, do an easy little brake fluid flush. It's really simple, especially when you're using that pressure brake fluid flush machine from SP Tools USA. Again, I'll put down in the description below the link to everything in here. Well, I think I've done enough dirty work for this evening. I've got to get this place all cleaned up, finished, and closed up because it's closing time here. It's like 7:30 at night and everybody's wanting to close the building down. So I need to get this stuff put away, hurry up and get it done. Another good point to be is to, once you're done using this pressurized brake fluid service tool, make sure you guys clean it out. You don't really want the fluid sitting in this thing over a long amount of time. Maybe if you know you're going to be using it in the next day or so, it'd be all right to keep nice and sealed in here with the cap obviously closed. But any amount of time that you leave this open to the elements, the air, there's moisture in the air, it's actually going to be breaking down that brake fluid too. So I always like to use fresh brake fluid, especially when I'm doing services like this that really count on my cars. That's it for the information that I've got for you today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed content like this one. If you do, make sure you subscribe to the channel, turn on that bell notification so you get notified when I come out with cool, awesome content just like this one here today. Hopefully you guys had a good time. I did. Thanks, and as always, you guys stay awesome.